So it was these socks I wanted to re-knit, and
Is there such a thing as a pill hook?
It's a nice big juicy one.
But I thought there was such a thing as a pill hook that you used to pull off pills.
No, it's not called a pill hook. Flower wants to sort of distribute. I said distribute. Anybody who watched our last show will be proud of me.
What is the purpose of logic problems?
Very good for your brain.
For 46 years, I've wondered this.
So, I get to lick my finger. Bonus.
I may have the constitution of a newborn baby, but I can tell you this.
So, oh my goodness, it's so yummy. It's like, well, I'll describe it when I eat it. It's good. I can't even tell you. It's so yummy. So that's everything that we're going to need. So it's need. Do you get it? So, and you can see. I hope you can see. I'm a little bit out of breath now.
Welcome, everyone, to the Bakery Bears video show. Now then, this is a seriously exciting show.
Is it?
It is, and I shall tell you why. Because every year, we like to bring you something new and exciting. Now, I'm not going to start at the very beginning, because that would take ages. List every year.
Oh, right. Okay.
From 2015 onwards.
That would take a while, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I shall start, as an example, just with 2020, because in 2020, it's sort of the very start of Walking the Dales.
Yeah.
In 2021, we brought you the very first full season of My Favourite Colourways. This year, in the last episode, we brought you Walking the Wall.
Walking the Wall.
And oh my goodness.
Oh, everyone loved it. Oh, I'm so pleased you all loved it. Oh, thank you everyone for all your lovely comments.
We've been inundated actually, which has been, it's been so lovely. Someone summed it up really well. I can't remember exactly who it was. I won't embarrass them by saying even if I could remember. But they said, "Oh Dan, you really have become an excellent filmmaker." And I thought that was superb, because yes, if you look back to 2015 and 16, as we are doing currently with our favourite places to knit revisited, at certain points it's slightly embarrassing.
I don't think it is, you know.
It's really funny, isn't it? I'll sit there editing it.
I keep saying to he'll be editing these old things and he'll be like laughing and saying, "Oh, this is just so terrible."
And then I'll be like, "I can't put this out. I just can't do it."
And I always say to him, you can't just start doing something and suddenly be an expert, can you? It's a gradual progression. It's like anything.
Yes, absolutely it is. So, it's always a bit scary when you do something new, because you never know how people are going to respond and react.
Yeah.
And also as well, when you're trying to sort of bring together lots of things, as we said last time, the whole idea with Walking the Wall is to take the things that you loved from Walking the Dales and marry them with some of the historical things that we've done through the years, but also, make something new. And thankfully, you all really enjoyed it.
You did.
Woohoo!
Yay.
So yes, fear not, Walking the Wall will be here in March for its next episode. The right decision, most definitely. Although, currently the weather's a bit weird, but on Sunday
it's very odd
we had
weather at the moment.
Every type of weather in one day.
Absolutely did. There was even snow at one point, I think.
Oh, it went from full-on snow.
Yeah. Rain
to sleet
to rain
bright
to
sun.
Wind, really
skies.
Black skies, and then 5 minutes later blue skies and sunshine.
All in one day.
All in one day. Very,
it was a
very
joy.
Strange weather.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why it does not make any sense whatsoever to try and go and film in the environment that is Northumberland in this type of sort of mixed weather conditions. So it will be back in March. So that leaves a gap. And this brings me on to the reason why today's show is so exciting. Because for the first time ever, in 1 year, we're bringing you two brand new shows.
I know,
But even
right.
beyond that, it's the first time we've ever run 3
Yes, right.
of our sort of marquee shows.
All at the same time, alternating, yeah.
And on that just point, I know I've mentioned it before, but I have to say this is all thanks to our wonderful Knitability editor, Jen.
Yes.
Who has freed up our time so that we can focus on producing lovely shows which we know you love, whilst Jen does all the sort of administration-y work that we used to do, pulling together our magazine Knitability.
Yes.
And a new issue.
A new issue?
It's only out.
Is it out right now?
It is, but I'll talk about that in the Endy Bits. Yes, I think it's her best issue yet, actually. I said this to Jen when she sent it through. I'm like, my goodness, this is
I wrote an article
tremendos.
and I called it a stash or not to stash. Did I call it that?
I don't know.
I think I did.
Cool.
And it was all about stash and yarn stash, of course, and how we manage it. And do you have a big stash? Do you have a little stash? What do you do in terms of purchasing yarn? So it was cool. It's interesting to go through the sort of mental process of what I've done over the years.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I wrote about something completely different. But look, you're all wondering, why is this such an exciting episode? Well, as I said, it's the start of a brand new show.
Yes.
Because Kay is back with a brand new cooking segment, Kay's Cosy Kitchen. This is a series she conceived probably summer last year, I think it was.
Yeah, I think so.
And it was all sort of focused around the fact that over the course of the last 2 years, we dramatically changed our diets. And you started to come up with this series where you were going to share some of the things that we do.
Yeah, things that I now bake and cook on a regular basis that really suit our ageing constitutions.
Yes. More of that later on in the show. Hey, look, I must just say, and please tell me if I shouldn't say this.
Okay.
If you're a Bakery Bear patron, don't miss the patron-only show coming at the end of this month.
You can say.
Can I say? I can't say why.
Yes. No.
But all I can say is, look, I'm so excited. For the last 2 years, we've run something called the Knit You.
Yeah.
And Kay's been coming up with this new thing that we're going to be doing in the summer. Yeah. And I said to her yesterday, I think it was, this is so much better than the Knitting University.
I don't necessarily think it's better. It's just very different, and it's something that's new to me. So I've spent a lot of time, and I still am spending a lot of time working on it, and it's honestly been the most fun I've had in a long time in coming up with something, new content and new creative content. And it really, I've just become so absorbed in it, and I think that's always a really good thing, isn't it? And time just, I'll be working on it and time just goes. And I said to you the other day, didn't I? And it was like lunchtime. I said, it can't be lunchtime. And it was, and I've just become so absorbed in it. But it's really fun. I'm loving it, and I can't wait to talk about it. And I'll do that on, like Dan says, in February's patron-only podcast.
When I was young, I used to go on holiday every year to the same place. And we used to go for ages because it was the only holiday. I mean, it was such a feeble excuse. Most people only have one holiday.
Yeah, no, exactly.
My dad used to
I only had one holiday a week, and that one holiday a year, and that was for a week in the summer. You went away. Oh, we only had one holiday. Yeah, but it was.
No, that wasn't me that said that.
5 weeks.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Don't you feel sorry for him?
We used to go and live on a campsite for 5 weeks.
Yeah, you see, that's not.
I felt like a transient person.
That's like not doing.
Honestly,
that.
You started to feel.
I don't camp.
Well, it's weird. It's not like going and living in a hotel in Beverly Hills for 5 weeks.
No, I'm not a hotel person either, to be honest. But I'd rather that than in a tent.
Off we would go on holiday to Spain, and every day we would do the same thing. We would traipse down the beach. I would pull the beach umbrella. I'd pull it down really, really low.
You weren't in Cleethorpes then, clearly.
No. I would hide underneath because I really didn't want to get a tan, and the sun didn't like me.
You just burnt, didn't you?
And I would peer out from underneath, and I would see my dad doing logic problems.
Oh gosh, I used to do logic problems. I loved them.
And I remember a couple of times, I'd sort of sneak a look at the book, and there's this grid, and there's these stupid clues, and I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, and I'd look at the first clue, and I'd look at it for a few minutes. I think I've got no idea what that's going on.
Yeah.
And I would put it down and move on with my day.
Yeah.
And I always wondered, what is the purpose of logic problems?
Very good for your brain.
For 46 years, I've wondered this. Well, not quite, because I didn't do it from birth. Maybe 30 years.
Right, okay.
Maybe 35 years I've wondered. And then I went out to sort the bins out last week. And the purpose of logic problems became clear to me, because we have a range of houses in the area where we live, and I can tell you that the bin men had come, and we have bins, we have recycling bits, and we have glass recycling bits.
Yeah.
And they'd literally put everyone's, each different bit in a different place. And I'm stood out there looking at all these things, and I'm thinking, my brain's going to explode. I can't work this out. But I did.
Honestly.
I must have been there 10 minutes. Move that there, move that. Oh, no, that was wrong. I'll move it back.
Doing the bins these days, it really is. It's like a full-time job, honestly.
I'm terrified of the bin men. Long-time listeners will know. I have to shut the curtains and hide when the bin men come.
We don't look when they come, because
we're so scared.
Sometimes they haven't taken the rubbish. You know, if you put a tiny speck of something,
Look, I don't want to tempt anything.
You know, in the wrong area.
This house is like a well-oiled machine.
They put on
now.
a big sticker saying it's contaminated.
Contaminated.
And you're like, what have I done?
It.
And there'll be like a paper straw in the wrong place. And you know, I'm not dissing recycling at all.
Look,
I'm really
come
not.
and visit, and you will see that this house is a well-oiled, slick machine.
We have got it sorted now, haven't we?
I'd like to hope so. I'm still terrified, though, that they're not going to come.
We've got more bins than I can even shake a stick at, honestly.
But let me tell you, I was thrilled to discover that logic problems had a purpose, and it was to sort my bins out. Look, this show's huge today, so I need to shut up.
Yes.
Because it's time that we found out. Kay Jones, what's on your needles?
Okay, so do you remember I made this shiny bag? What was the name of this fabric? I can't remember the name.
Taffeta.
Oh, thank you. It's silk taffeta.
When did I become that man?
I know, I just look at, isn't it pretty? Oh, I kind of want a dress. Oh, and I tell you what, talking of dresses, I've ordered Bryony's prom dress.
Our daughter Brian, she's got her prom coming up this summer.
Yeah.
And
July, it's not till July.
Much sort of planning.
Yes, much planning. So we looked online, and Bryony chose a dress, and I've ordered it. So, you know, it might not fit. I might have to send it back and get another size, but
we've got enough time.
We've got plenty of time. It's a gorgeous colour. She chose like a peacock blue, like a deep sort of peacock blue. Beautiful. Anyway, digressed because I saw the taffeta. So yeah, it's in this bag that I made, and it's Dan's vest tank top that I've been working on for a while now, and I picked it up a week or so ago. I thought, oh yes, I'm going to work on that. I'm going to make some progress, and I did do that. I worked on it and I knit an inch or two, and then something hit me.
Oh no.
I know.
It didn't, did it?
I was thinking of Britney Spears then.
I just got it. That was even that was even too cryptic.
We just watched a documentary on Britney Spears. So
yeah, but that wasn't the reason why you said it. You said it because of Hit Me Baby One More Time.
I did, yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
I got it.
Yes.
I got there.
Well done. So yeah, this is the tank top I've been knitting for Dan. If you remember, it's from a vintage pattern. It's the one with these two lovely fellas on. Oh, aren't they fabulous? And I started knitting it and worked on it, like I said, done an inch or two, and then I thought, I'll measure it and see where I'm up to. I'm working on the back. I suddenly looked at it and thought, do you know what? That looks really wide. I'm going to measure it. Now, I will prefix this by saying I did swatch. I did gauge swatch for this, and I got spot on gauge. It's knit flat. I swatched flat. I used the exact needles I'm knitting. I did everything, and I got exact gauge. So I measured it. Here it is. I'll show you. Here's the. Oh, isn't it lovely? Oh my goodness! I'm just sad. It's just gorgeous. So I measured it, and it's way wider than it should be.
And we have a problem because I don't wear wide things.
He doesn't like loose fitting things, and I deliberately knit. I'm knitting the size a little bit smaller than his chest actually is, because I know that he doesn't like bagginess. So I'm actually knitting the 42 chest and Dan's chest is about 43.5. I was aware of that, made sure that I wasn't knitting a size that was going to come out too big. You know what I'm going to say, don't you? It's way too wide. So, if this, in theory, if this was to fit a 42 chest, you would expect this back piece to measure somewhere around 21 inches, because that will then give you 42. Now, I don't know with this pattern if it's got positive ease knit into it, negative ease, but I think back in this kind of time, I mean, to me, this looks fairly fitted, doesn't it?
His.
Yeah, his looks a bit baggier,
Yeah.
but this fella's is fairly fitted. I really don't think in this day and age they did build in huge amounts of positive ease. I think they were fairly, if you were knitting the 42, I think it would fit quite nicely. I don't think this is the 60s. I mean, I don't think they really wore like oversized garments so much in the 60s. So let's say it should be about 21 inches, the back piece across here. I measured it and it was over 24 inches. Hugely different. So that means that this is going to come out like a 48, which is way too big. And you can see if I'm not even stretching this, and if I just hold the piece, can you see how big it is?
It's ginormous.
It's huge, right? So I thought, right, what's gone wrong? Something has gone wrong. I'll tell you what's gone wrong is my gauge is different.
That's weird.
It's as simple as that. So the pattern said that your gauge, I think it should have been 7 stitches to the inch from memory. Yes. Let's not worry about row gauge. That doesn't really matter, does it, in terms of the width? You know, row gauge, you can knit more, you can knit less to make the length. I'm not concerned about row gauge. It's the stitch gauge that's the problem. So the pattern called for 7 stitches to the inch. I swatched and I got bang on 7 stitches to the inch. I measured it before I blocked, just straight off the needles. I got 7 stitches. I washed it and blocked it and let it dry, and I still had 7 stitches. So I thought, right, I'm good to go with these needle sizes. And I did adjust my needle size. I think I used a size smaller than the pattern recommended to get that gauge. So I've measured my gauge in, because I've got some good sections of stocking stitch here. So I measured my gauge all over these different sections of stocking stitch, and all over the garment I'm getting 6 stitches to the inch. So over 4 inches, that's obviously 4 stitches. And I thought, well, would that make that big of a difference? And I did a bit of maths, and I think I did the maths right, but I'm not certain. But yes, the answer is yes, it would make that big of a difference having one less stitch, because it means, if you've got less stitches per inch, that means your gauge is bigger. So that's what's made the difference. And, it begs the question, you kind of think, what's the point in swatching? I think, when you do a swatch, and my swatch was sort of yay big,
I wonder if you'd knit it all in one straight after you'd swatched.
I did. I cast it on straight away.
Yeah, that's true.
I did cast it on straight
away.
away.
You got loads done very quick.
Yeah.
And it's not like that looks like it suddenly changed.
No, and it's not like my gauge changed up here.
No.
It's the same. The whole way it's the same. I think the crux of the problem is when you gauge swatch, even if you do a decent size swatch, I think your gauge can change on the actual garment itself. Yes, this has got stitch pattern in it, I know that, and that obviously can change your gauge. But there's good sections of stocking stitch, and the gauge in the pattern was in stocking stitch. So you have got these good areas, to go at in terms of measuring your gauge. And I think, I have seen things in the past where people say if you're going to gauge swatch, do as big of a gauge swatch as you possibly can. And I think that's true. Because I just
this
think...
could be your gauge swatch.
Well, I know. I just think that, knitting something this big for a gauge swatch and then actually working on a full-size garment, I think there's a lot of different factors at play. You've got a larger area of fabric that can be influencing the weight of the piece and things like that. I was obviously knitting slightly looser on the thing itself than I was on the swatch, and maybe that's a conscious thing, a subconscious thing. Maybe it's like, oh, I'm knitting a swatch, so, you know, you're like concentrating a bit, aren't you? And maybe my tension was tighter because of that. So for whatever the reason, I mean, I don't know if anybody else has had those kinds of issues. You know, you gauge swatch, you got gauge, and then you knit the garment and it comes out a different size. The long and short of it is, it's too big. It's not slightly too big, it's way too big. You know, look at the size of it. I mean, that's, you know, the size of Dan. He's not, you know, he's tall, but he's not wide. Now, I've got a couple of options. I could, you know, somebody, when I told my friend, she said, oh, could you just seam it further in to take in some of that width? And I could do that, but we're talking about, what's the difference? We're talking about 6 inches, aren't we, of difference? And that's a big amount to seam in. Plus also, you know, if my gauge is different, my gauge is going to be different across the shoulders as well. So the shoulders are going to come out wider as well. And that, I don't think I could do anything about that, really. And I don't like doing things like that, you know. I don't like doing something afterwards to correct something that I know is already wrong, you know, and I've only knit, I don't know, half the back, if you like. I'd have to completely knit the rest of it knowing that it was the wrong size, and I just can't do that. Hugely the wrong size, I just can't do that. So I am not going to continue with this vest. Now, I could rip it out and start again, but my heart's just not in it now. I'm really sorry to say, you know, I know a lot of people would just rip it out and start again, either with smaller needles or, you know, go down a size or whatever. But I just can't bring myself to do it. And Dan said, look, don't worry about it. You know, he's got 2 tank tops already. He's quite happy. He didn't necessarily need a 3rd one. However, I've got all this beautiful yarn and it's gorgeous, and I'm absolutely not going to waste the yarn. This is the yarn I'm using. It's BC Garn Samilla. Now, I think this is sold as a DK weight, but to me it's much more of a sport weight. It's really not DK. I think it is sold as a DK, but I couldn't be absolutely certain on that. And it's burnt orange is the colour. It's gorgeous. It's lovely yarn. So I do have plans for this. Quite exciting and bold plans, let's say. That I'm not going to say what they are yet because I'm still working on said plans. But as soon as I've sort of figured it out and done all of the things I need to do, then, you know, I'll obviously let you know what my plans are for this yarn. But, you know, it's just one of those things, isn't it? I'm sure we've all been in this situation where something has just not gone right. And, you know, I've knit in 2 other tank tops and not had a problem at all in terms of gauge and things like that. I don't know. Maybe it's just because the yarn is so different to the recommended, you know, because it's a 60s pattern and all that. I don't think it's that, though, because like I say, I did gauge swatch. I don't know. It's a gorgeous colour, isn't it, though? Oh, isn't it a beautiful colour? So all is not lost. I am working on something, like I say, and maybe next time I will tell you what that thing is if it works out. Dan Jones?
Yes.
What's on your needles? Hopefully something happier.
Well, that's happy. Why is that not happy?
Well, it is happy. It's just a bit of a shame, isn't it?
Well,
it's a bit of a shame.
Yeah, but, you know, it really doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter. I know it doesn't matter.
In the grand scheme of things,
I feel like
it matters zero.
like I've failed, and I don't like failing with things. But I don't know how I could have avoided it, because, like I said, I thought I'd done everything.
It's called life, isn't it? Sometimes things don't work out. You know, there's no point being down about it. You just said that you've got plans for the yarn.
I do have plans, and they're very exciting plans, so yeah.
And they are exciting plans. I know what they are, and, you know, if it works out, it'll be cool.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it's good to try and do things, especially older things, because it's just interesting to see how things used to be written. And I think that you know, there's a lot to be taken actually from the way that old patterns were written.
Absolutely.
Because they said a lot more in less words.
But also, in a lot of ways, they were very sketchy as well, and you really had to have a good knitting knowledge of garments to knit pattern. It didn't hold. They didn't hold your hand so much as I think modern patterns do.
Yeah, and I think that's good. It's good to get that perspective sometimes.
Yeah,
because,
I agree.
I think that it's sort of cool to see in all aspects of life where we were and where we are now, and you can always learn stuff from older ones. So last time I showed you, it's by Miss Rap and Turn. It's the fingering weight. It's Pieces of Home.
Pieces of Home.
The Pieces of Home mittens.
Yes.
And they had on them some Dan braids. They're not Latvian braids. They're Dan braids because I couldn't... Look, I'm very literal. And you should be too when you're knitting stuff. I'm very literal with how I approach my knitting. I do what I'm told. I'm a good boy. So I read the pattern, and whatever the pattern tells me to do, it's what I do. So, as you may recall, showed you last time, knit through the first one, wrong. Spoke to Kay, we'll just continue doing it wrong, because otherwise we'll need to rip back and you'll need to do it again, because it'll look silly if there's a Dan braid with a Latvian braid.
Yeah.
I'm not going to call it a Dan braid anymore, because it'll become a thing, and I don't want it to become a thing. I can actually tell you how to do a Dan braid now, though. So I wanted to prove to you that I'm not an idiot and that I can knit Latvian braids.
Yes.
Because look!
There's one.
Now,
here's one I did earlier.
Now that's not just a Latvian braid. That's a marvellous Latvian braid.
It is a marvellous Latvian braid.
It looks tremendous.
It does.
This is... It's the star mitts. It's these foreign words again. Look, I always find it insulting when I try and say foreign words and I say it wrong. So look, in English it's the star mitts. I'll link it in the show notes below so you can go see the pattern. I really, really like this pattern. And Kay's actually put on the one that I finished.
No.
Well, I haven't finished it. Because thumbless mitts is not a thing.
No, we've got
Maybe we should make it a thing.
We should, shouldn't we?
What
Still
could
got
you
the
do?
thumb to do.
So if you need to put your thumbs up. So if you've been to see a film that you thought was really good,
yeah, you can still put your thumb up.
you could still do your thumbs up.
Yeah.
It's perfect. Yeah. It's perfect. So all finished off. I loved it. I loved it.
Not been blocked yet, and look how beautiful it looks.
I think it fits. I think it fits good.
Yeah, my toes. My toes are up here.
So finished one, cast on the next one, and this time, when I was doing the Latvian braid, I thought, I'm really going to concentrate now. Because there is a benefit through coming to knitting with no knowledge, which is what I did. And then when you're doing something new, it's not like you've seen your granny doing it or you've had experience of it before. It's completely new. So it's not like I'm going to spot. I've spoken a lot over the years about how it's taken me time to be able to read my knitting. It's all stuff that comes with experience, isn't it? I think, though, that I'm glad that I do take things literally. Because I think, one of the problems that you can have with a pattern is if you can go off on one because you can think... Because I have done that.
Yeah, you can sometimes think, oh, yeah, I know how to do that. And you'll just go off and do it.
Like on the Dunbrock.
Yeah, and then you'll think,
where I thought I knew how to do twisted stitches.
Yeah, yeah.
I did not. So I told a fib a moment ago, I'm normally literal.
But sometimes
it's when you're doing something that you've done before.
Yeah.
That's when you get caught out.
True. But
that's perhaps why I like doing new stuff.
There's not necessarily just one way of doing that thing.
No.
Yeah.
And that's what makes something cool. When there's different ways to do it, you can get different effects, as I discovered with the Dunbrock. But when I was knitting this Latvian braid, I thought, right, I'm really good at... First of all, I knit it with trepidation because my fear was it was going to come out like a Dan braid.
And it didn't.
And it did not. It came out perfect. So then I thought, right, I'm going to go get the two patterns and I'm going to find out what the problem is. And I spotted what the problem was and I took it to Kay and I did not say one single word.
No, and I've never knit a Latvian braid, so I was just...
But have you knit a Latvian braid?
Can't speak again. No, I've never knit a Latvian braid, so I was just reading the instructions side by side.
Well, I just gave you... First of all, I gave you the one... for the
Dan braid, yes.
For the Dan braid, and I said, read that.
Yes.
And you read it.
Yeah. And I interpreted it the same way you interpreted it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you could argue, if you were Miss Rappentern, that she had written it correctly if you were inside her brain.
Yeah, I wonder if it's just a language thing. I wonder if it's just I don't know if she's not English.
I don't know either.
If she's not
But
English speaker as her main language, and it may be that it's just that.
as anyone who's knit a Latvian braid before, you will know that you need to keep the yarn in front of your work when you're knitting the braid. And what she did was, in the process of explaining how to knit the Latvian braid, I mean, first of all, I don't know why she said take all the yarn to the back.
Take the yarn to the back.
And then she said...
But she didn't mean the back of the work.
She meant, like here.
Yeah.
So like here...
You have two yarns and one is behind the other.
Yeah, so actually looking at that, which one's behind and which one's in front?
Well, you haven't done it yet, have you? I mean,
Yeah.
I would probably say that one is behind
Yes.
because that stitch is,
Yes.
going to be worked next sort of thing.
Yes.
But that's what...
So if I've just worked that, that's behind. And if I'm just working that, that's now in front.
Yeah.
So that's what you have to do when you're knitting a Latvian braid. The yarn stays at the front, and when... I can't remember which way it is, but one round you're always going underneath.
Yeah.
And then the other round you're always going over the top.
Yeah.
And the way she worded it...
It made it sound like you took the yarn to the back of the needle.
And that's what I did.
Yeah.
So when I was knitting that Latvian braid, instead of keeping the yarn at the front, I was taking the yarn to the back. Like the way I was perceiving the way. I mean, I would argue quite strongly that I think anyone who read that pattern would perceive it that way.
If you'd never knit a Latvian braid before, if you'd knit one before, you might think, hang on a minute, that's not...
Well, the funny thing is, I've knitted one twice before.
But the problem is, like you said, you just follow the instructions, but you don't retain it necessarily in your braid.
I don't.
You're just following what it says.
Yes.
Whereas if you'd knit a Latvian braid several times, you do retain it, don't you, in your brain?
Yeah.
So if you'd read those instructions, you probably would have gone, hang on a minute, no, that's not right. This is what she means. And I'm sure you would have knit it correctly.
Yeah.
I think it's just down to sort of a lack of knowledge.
Whereas on the star mitts here, she's brilliant because in one sentence, and that's the other thing, on the other pattern, there's like...
It's very wordy.
It's very wordy.
Yeah,
This
very
one,
wordy.
in one sentence, she tells you exactly what you need to do, and at the very first thing that she's got in big capital letters is WYIF. With yarn in front.
I think it's just down to different styles of writing patterns, isn't it? All pattern writers are different.
Yeah. It's how experienced you are, how much ability you've got as a pattern writer.
Yeah, and like I say, it may just be a language thing. I don't know.
And some people are good teachers and some people aren't so good teachers. And I think that, for me, is what separates... If you've knitted a pattern and you've really enjoyed it, there's a good chance that the person who's written that is a good teacher.
Yeah.
And I don't believe, in my experience, and I used to work as a teacher for a long time, I didn't meet many people who learned to be good teachers.
No, I think it's a sort of
it's either in you or it's not.
Vocational thing, isn't it?
Well, it's either there or it isn't there.
Yeah, it's kind of like people who are artists, painters and things.
I'm not a painter.
Some people say anybody can draw, and that's true. Anybody can draw. But some people are very natural at it, aren't they? And I think it's a case of that. Yeah, some things come more naturally to people than others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look.
But these are fabulous.
First one's done.
Snatched out of my hands.
It's my project. The second one.
The yarn's gorgeous. Isn't the yarn gorgeous?
Yes.
We'll say what the yarn... What's that? It's not Let Lopey, is it?
No.
No.
So those are my two, and look, it's all twisty, because that's my colourwork technique.
Yeah.
Coming to the fore.
It's Blacker Swan DK, and the colours are Hawkweed, that's the orangey colour, orangey brown, and Pale Maiden. The Blacker Swan is honestly one of the most beautiful yarns I have ever knitted with. I've done reviews on this, I've spoke about it before. I've knitted several things with this yarn. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's a British yarn, but the sheep are Falkland Islands merino, and then some of them are spun with a little bit of Shetland in there as well. Gorgeous, gorgeous yarn.
Who sang? Yes, I'll do it.
You'll lose
Who
it.
sang? Hawkwind. There was a band called Hawkwind, and did they sing The Winds of Change?
I know the song, but I don't know. I'm not very good with naming who sang what song, am I?
Hawkweed made me think of Hawkwind.
Right.
I'm sure they were called Hawkwind. What else is on your needles?
Okay. I'm working on a pair of socks. Now, this is a joyous, joyous joy of a project. And it combines a few things, actually. But first of all, it's in this lovely bag. This is a bag from Alex Collins. I've had this, gosh, a few years now. I bought it as a sort of Christmassy bag because it's got a little cottage in the woods. Can you see them there? And some of the trees are gold. But I just use it all the time. I don't think it's particularly overly festive. I just love Alex's bags. You know, she designs and prints all of her own fabric. She uses all kind of really beautiful organic, natural fabrics. This is like a combination of sort of linens and cottons. And then she obviously makes them. And I've actually just ordered a new style of bag from her. I saw that she was doing this new bag. It's like a little tote bag. And again, she's designed the fabric. Oh, it just grabbed me because it's like moons and stars. And then the bottom portion is like a dark blue fabric. Oh, it's gorgeous because I just love the moon. I look at the moon every night and it just, I don't know, it just calms me and settles me. I love the moon. So yeah, it's in this lovely bag and it's a pair of socks. Now, this pair of socks is something that, it's a design actually that I created a few years ago and I knit it a few years ago, but I couldn't figure something out on it, so I never sort of went forward with it. But Bryony had on the pair of socks recently that I put the pattern into and I just love them and she loves them. I said, oh, do you know what? I'm going to dye some yarn and I'm going to re-knit those socks. So that's what I did. But first of all, I'll show you the pair of socks that I originally knit this pattern in. You might remember them. It's a good few years ago now. And actually they're wearing really well. It's these ones. It just had this lovely lace panel down one side. So it's the outside of the leg. And the other side's just plain. But I just loved this little lace panel. And this yarn's gorgeous. This was a Cascade Heritage, I think. I'm pretty sure it was a Cascade Heritage. Isn't it lovely? And then I just used, that's Cascade Heritage for the heels as well, but solid. This was the one that obviously comes as stripes, self-striping. It's called something else, isn't it? Cascade Heritage something. I can't remember. But so it's this pair. And you know, these have just been washed. She's worn these such a lot. You can see, I mean, it's good to see wear, isn't it? If I hold them close, can you see they have got some pilling, but no holes or anything, and she wears them regularly. So it was these socks I wanted to re-knit, and
Is there such a thing as a pill hook?
No, it's a bill hook.
Oh, okay.
Isn't that something to do with grabbing a duck or something? Grabbing a...
By the bill?
No. No, you grab them around the neck, don't you? Is it?
Do you?
Do they like grab?
By the way, we're not
geese and
saying
swans?
you should grab ducks by the neck.
No, like geese and swans, you know, conservation people, if they have to get them to tag them and
They
things.
use a bill hook.
Isn't it like a big stick with a hook on the end? Am I completely
Isn't that a shepherd's
wrong?
crook?
No, it's not a shepherd's crook. Well, what's a bill hook then? I've heard of it. Or is it something used in fishing?
Maybe it is to pull the nets in.
I don't know now. Have I just said something completely random and wrong?
But
I don't know.
I thought there was such a thing as a pill hook that you used to
pill
pull
hook?
off pills.
No, it's not called a pill hook.
What's it called?
What, like a de-pilly little machine? What are they called?
But what would they have used?
It's not a hook. It's not
okay.
a pill hook.
Right.
What are they called?
I bought
don't
one of
know
those
what
for my
they're
mum at
called.
Christmas once.
You can get
The shaving thingy.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can get
Yeah, I got
battery
one.
powered ones,
Yeah.
can't you? Or you can get just a manual like little shaver
That must
thing.
have been the rubbishest Christmas present in the history of the
I
world.
know, it must have been. Well, not if you've got loads of pilly garments.
Yeah.
You can make them all smooth again. It would be a cool present.
Doesn't look too
wouldn't
bad
it?
though on there.
No, it's not too bad. So yeah, so I wanted to re-knit these, and the first thing I had to figure out, the thing that I had an issue with was I couldn't, at the time, it might be 3 years ago that I did these, but I couldn't quite figure out the rib and getting the rib to flow into that panel, because I'm a real kind of stickler for the rib being part of whatever the design is on the sock. And I don't like it where the rib is just the rib and then you just do the design, it doesn't matter what happens to the rib kind of thing. I like it to flow. And when I knit these, it didn't flow. And I tried to do the second sock in a different way and it still wasn't right. You know, this was the first sock. I just did a 2x2 rib and then I just went into the pattern. But at the top here, you probably can't see, but it doesn't flow because one of the purl stitches doesn't quite line up. So when I knit the second sock, I tried something else and I put in like a panel of 1x1 at the top here. But that didn't work either because I ended up with this random one knit stitch at the side here. That didn't work. So the first thing I did was I sat down and I reworked the rib and I worked it out. And this just shows you, doesn't it, that it's just that experience that I've had since I knit them, that, you know, at the time I was really struggling to work out how to do that. And then I sat down with some, you know, graph paper and I just figured it out quite quickly on how I could do it to make it flow. So I did that and then I thought, right, I'm going to dye some yarn and I'll show you the yarn. So I've got a main colour and then I've got a contrast. So this is the main colour. I love it so much. It's a tonal, but there are tiny specks. You'll see the specks more when I show you the sock, but can you see here? There's tiny specks of like a sort of brownish colour. It's the prettiest shade. I love this shade of, it's sort of like corally, tangerine-y sort of colour. So I thought, right, as the contrast, I'm going to pick out one of the colours I used to dye this and I'll dye up a sort of tonal just in that colour. And I got this. Look at that. Is that not completely fabulous? Oh my goodness, I love it so much. The most exciting part of this is that on the next My Favourite Colourways, I'm going to be dyeing up this colour. And I'll tell you, I won't necessarily dye up the tonal because this is just one dye colour, but I'll tell you what I did to get this tonal. But yeah, I'm going to be dyeing up this colour. And because of that, I'm not going to tell you the name. I'll keep it a secret because the name of the yarn colour is the same as the name of the design I've given the sock. So let me pop it onto a blocker. I'm on the first sock and I've just got through the gusset decreases. So here we go. Oh, look how pretty. And the good thing about knitting this first of all in a self-striping is that you can see how lovely it works with self-striping yarn. And I think that's great to have a pattern that works with self-striping because that's always a thing, isn't it? If you want to knit striping socks, there's not that many patterns, I don't think, that you would instantly think that would work well. But this one definitely works well with self-striping. So we've got that lovely lace panel. It's just on one side and the other side is just plain. But you can see, if I hold this up, you'll see all those lovely speckles. Oh, so pretty. The yarn is just so gorgeous. I just love it so much. And the lace panel is so lovely to work. And I'm doing it on double points, as you can see. And the great thing about working this pattern on double points is that that panel fits onto one double point entirely. And I work on 4 double pointed needles and I knit with the 5th, but it fits entirely onto one double point. So you know, as you come to it, you're like, right, yeah, I'm on the needle that's got the pattern on, and then the rest of the needles it's just plain knit. And that's just so lovely to just have that bit of something to do and then you just get to knit the rest of the round. I think that's so nice. So you can see the rib here. Let me move that tail out of the way. I've done a 1x1 rib, but what it's allowed me to do, I changed the placement of the lace a tiny bit, and then I hope you can see that the 1x1 rib now flows really nicely into the pattern. And I love a 1x1 rib. You could do it twisted if you wanted to. You know, if you prefer a twisted 1x1, you could just do it twisted and that would be cool. And this, oh, don't you love the contrast pink? It's so amazing. So I'm really, really enjoying knitting these socks. They're just an absolute pleasure. And for me, an indication of whether I'm happy with the design is how much I enjoy knitting it. And I think if I love knitting it, then I think other people would love knitting it too. And I'm just absolutely loving it. The yarn is gorgeous. Just with these, every now and again you just get these little tiny speckles, and the way I've dyed the yarn means that as you're knitting it you can actually see the different tones of colours that I've put into it, and that's just so lovely. So it looks like a simple yarn, doesn't it? You know, simple colour, but actually when you're knitting it close up you get to see those lovely colours that are in there, and it's just an absolute joy. So I'm using my favourite wooden needles. Actually, I love these double points. They are Knit Pick Sunstruck. I've spoke about these before. They're just lovely. They're smooth. They're, you know, they're pointy enough. I've knit that lace without a problem at all. They're really nice and pointy. For wooden needles, you know, they're very good. They're just a joy to knit with, and I like that they're pale coloured as well. So if your yarn is darker, you know you can see your stitches nice and easily. So yeah, that's my lovely socks. So I'll probably show these again next time, because it'll be on the next show that I'll be dyeing this yarn, and then I can tell you all about the name and why I've called it that. But yeah, loving them.
I won't dwell long because I should have finished this and I haven't, so I'm sorry about that. But it's the final bits. By the time, well, next time I will have finished it. I will have, because I've only got 3 inches of ribbing
You're just on the collar, aren't you?
Just need a shorter cable, and then it's just 3 inches of collar, or I'll look at the Radara, to be honest, and see how long I did the collar on that
3
one.
inches seems a lot to me, unless it folds over.
Well, I think it does. I don't know.
Maybe it folds over and you sew it down or something.
I don't think so.
Right.
I'll look at the Radara one.
We'll figure that out.
Look at the Radara one. But yes, it's the anniversary in the lovely Lopi, and
it's fabulous. Oh, it's nearly done.
These cool top bits, which I really liked doing. They were fun. Lots of decreases and things. And it's the Galaxy is the black, and that's what the collar's going to be in up here at the top. And then it's a lovely sort of contrast between this sort of creamy white, which is nice, and then the green is obviously what the body's in down there. And I've really found that the more you knit with Lopi, the less it bothers your hands. Initially it used to bother my hands a bit, and it doesn't really now, which is weird. Maybe they've just got used to it, but they were getting red, and but now it just doesn't seem to happen. So that's really good. And it just, it's amazing when you look on this side and you see like there's purpley bits. Really quite bright purpley bits, and there will be
in the Galaxy.
Yeah, there will be further down.
It's gorgeous colour. It's got little specks of like bright blue and bright purple. It's gorgeous.
There will be in the main body as well, I'm sure. Yeah, there is down here.
Yeah,
it's epic.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
That combined with the sort of grey, just the rough sea that I'm knitting the Alexander in. That's also, it's similar to the Galaxies. One of those. I mean, actually, I probably would say that I prefer's the wrong word, because they're both great. But I really like the rough sea one because it just has. It's like this green, but not.
Yeah.
It's not green, not like this. It's green in a different way. It's sort of. It's what it says it is. It's like the Irish Sea.
It looks different in different lights.
Which, if you've looked at it,
yeah,
it looks rough.
It can be rough. The Irish Sea.
And you don't want to sail across it.
Yeah, the Irish
Definitely
Sea can
not.
be really rough. Yeah.
So the next time you see this will be next time when it's finished.
Yes.
Yes. What else is on your needles?
Okay, so the last thing I've been working on is another new thing. Ooh, and I'm loving this too. Oh, so exciting. You might remember over Advent I designed and I knit this cowl, which I've worn tons. I love it. So this is the Christingle Mingle cowl, and this will be a pattern that I put out around November time, I would think, because it's very festively named, so I'm going to save it until then. And I absolutely love designing it. I love knitting it. Me and my friend knit this together over Advent, and it was just so much fun. And I dyed all of these yarns. Now I had some left over because it used Yeah, I mean, certain bits of it used a bit more than others. I had 20 gram minis, I had 12 20 gram minis, and I had quite a bit left over, and I wanted to do something with it because I just loved the colours together, and I didn't want it to just disappear into, you know, scrap projects and things. So I thought, right, I'll see how much I've got. I weighed it all. I worked out how much I'd got, and I thought, do you know what? I've got enough to knit a hat, a sort of matching hat. How exciting. So I designed a little hat, and I'm knitting it, and I just love it. So I've gone down the stripe route, but the stripes are different to accommodate how much yarn I actually had left. So this is how it's looking. Oh, isn't it lovely? And I've changed the order that I've worked the colours, because when it's a hat, you know, you're going to always have this bit close to your face, aren't you? The cuff is going to be close to your face. So I wanted to use a colour that I thought would look best with my kind of eye colour. So I started with the blue, and then the other reason I did that is because the two colours I had the least of is the solid pink and then this sort of browny colour. I didn't have very much left of those because they were used for the ribs, top and bottom, and you use more for the ribs. So I had to sort of be guided by those two bits of leftovers as to how I used the yarns, but it all worked out. It was cool. So this is a sort of stripe sequence I'm using, and like I say, I started with the blue and then I'm just working through the colours, and I really love it. Oh, I really love it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this pattern into the Christingle Mingle cowl pattern as a little bonus, so that if you've got leftovers like that, then you can knit a hat as well. That's really cool, isn't it? I thought that would be really good. So I'll just, you know, it's just a simple pattern. There'll only be one size because, you know, I'm guided by how much yarn I've got, so I don't want to put in a bigger size because that would use more yarn. And this accommodates my head size, Bryony's head size. You know, it's sort of like I find it's a good sized hat. So I'm just working my way through that, and I'm about 7 inches now here. So I tend to work my hats to about 8 inches and then start the decreases. So I'm just going to see how I go in terms of which of the yarns I'll get to use. It might be that one of the colours I don't get to, but you know, that's fine, isn't it? I will have used almost all of it. And in fact, the brown and the pink, the pink, I had that much left, and the brown was a little bit less than that. It was really yarn chicken. It was a serious yarn chicken situation.
Didn't you lose yarn chicken sometime?
I know, I thought I was going to, but I just did it. I just literally did it with like that much left. So, you know, there is a chance if you're knitting this that you might lose the yarn chicken only with 1 or 2 of the colours. But, you know, if you do, I always find that you can go in, you can rummage through your stash, can't you? And if you only need a piece of yarn that big to finish it, you'll be able to find something that's a decent match and it won't be noticed. So I thought I'm just going to go with it, you know, and hopefully all will be fine. But all the other colours are perfectly fine. It was just the colours that I used for the rib which were a little bit tight. Like the blue at the bottom that I've used for the rib, I've got this little bit left. So there's a nice bit of leeway there. And the rest I've got a bit more, so that's fine. So yeah, this will be the Christingle Mingle hat that I'll pop into that pattern when it comes out later in the year. So I used the same rib, but I just modified it. Because this is going to be on your head, I wanted to make sure it was going to be ribby enough. You know, I didn't want it to be baggy at all. And by putting that lace in it, it does reduce the sort of sucky in ribbiness, if you know what I mean. So I modified it so that you've not got as much lace, but it's still there so that it links it to the cowl. And I think, you know, the two together, you can see that they're related, can't you? And I just love it. So I'm hoping I'll have this finished for next time. I'll be able to show you. Yeah,
cool.
Really loving it.
Right, this is it. About 2 years ago, we dramatically changed the way that we eat. And I think it would be fair to say it has totally transformed our lives. So last summer, Kay sat down and started planning a brand new series. It's about 6 months ago, I would say, from now, and I'm absolutely delighted that today all that planning comes to fruition. So without further ado, I think it's time that we sat back and enjoyed the very first episode of Kay's Cosy Kitchen.
I love cake. But I've reached the point in my life where cake no longer likes me.
What if I was to tell you that there is a solution?
A way that we can eat delicious meals and still feel great afterwards. In this series, I'm going to show you how I do it, and there won't just be puddings.
There'll be retro dinners and storeroom staples too.
This is going to be so much fun, so welcome to my Cosy Kitchen. Welcome everyone to a brand new series. I'm so excited to be back in the kitchen. Now this series is completely different to anything I've done before. Previously I've done more kind of puddings and cakes and things that are a little bit indulgent and special occasion things. But as inevitably as we all get a bit older, certainly as I get a bit older, you know, your system maybe can't tolerate as many of these things. And just lately, certainly the past year or so, I've been turning more to, more sort of traditional things and just looking at ways of cooking and baking, doing a bit of baking as well, in a way that really suits the way that we live our lifestyle now. We tend to not eat as many processed foods. We tend to cook everything from scratch. And within that process, I find that there are recipes and things, that I've created that I just make on a weekly basis. So we thought it might be fun to sort of create a series around those things that now form part of our weekly and monthly diet. Now there will be some savoury things, there will be some proper meals, so there'll be a couple of full meals, and then there will be some sort of more desserty, cakey things. But today we are kicking off this series with some things, I should say, that really I make absolutely weekly, and have just, as I've said before, they just now form part of our regular diet. And it's things that are really sort of staples, that the things that everybody probably eats every week, but you wouldn't necessarily make them yourself. But by making them yourself, it transforms it into something that is, you might think as ordinary, into something extraordinary, and it just takes it to a whole new level. So we're going to be making 3 things today. We're going to be making some delicious spelt bread. We're going to be making some homemade jam, but we're going to be starting off, the first thing you're going to see us make today is some pancakes, some spelt pancakes. Now I've mentioned spelt twice within those things there, so I should just really tell you briefly why I now use spelt flour in place of normal wheat flour. We found that spelt flour really, we can tolerate it, our systems can really tolerate it really well, and it doesn't upset our what have now become quite delicate tummies. And it's just transformed the things that we can eat, and it's just been absolutely fabulous. So spelt flour, if you don't know, it does contain gluten. That's the first thing I will say. It's not gluten-free. It does have gluten, so it's certainly not for those that can't have gluten. However, we can eat gluten, it's just that it doesn't particularly like us. The difference with spelt flour, with the gluten in spelt flour, is it's a different type of gluten, and it, as I understand it, it breaks down much more readily within your body, within your system. It doesn't cause those issues, certainly not for us. I can't speak for everyone, certainly not for us. We haven't found those issues we get with like normal shop bought bread. It's really gorgeous to work with. I've made all sorts out of it, and you'll be seeing it regularly within this series. I'll be using spelt flour, but of course you can use whatever flour you prefer. You don't have to use spelt flour. But I would say actually for the bread, that particular recipe is designed for spelt flour. So I'd really encourage you to give it a try if you haven't. So that's a little bit about the flour that we're going to be using. So the first thing we need to do is to get in the kitchen and make some pancakes. Okay, so what are we going to need to make our yummy pancakes? First of all, we've got the flour, and I'm using white spelt flour. We're then going to need some icing sugar. I think this, in some countries, I think this might be called confectioner's sugar. It's the sugar that looks like a powder, a white powder. We've then got some butter. This is about a tablespoon of butter. All I do is I just get my tablespoon and kind of cut into the butter and scoop out about a tablespoon. So it doesn't matter if it's a bit under or a bit over, but about a tablespoon of butter. We've got 2 eggs. We've got baking powder and some milk. So let's now take a look at what kitchen equipment we're going to need. So we're going to need a pan to cook our pancakes in. Mine is one of these deep sort of frying pan type pans. You know, it doesn't really matter what type of pan, but it should be like a frying pan, you know, where you've got that large area to cook in. And mine's a non-stick. It's a bit scratched. Don't look at that. But mine's a non-stick frying pan. We're going to need a bowl just to whisk up the batter, a balloon whisk, and then just sort of like a tablespoon, a fork, and some measuring spoons. So that's everything we're going to need, so it's time to get whisking that batter. Okay, so first thing to do is to put all of our dry ingredients into the bowl. So I've put my bowl on my scales and it's zeroized off. So I'm going to put my flour in first of all. So in goes the flour, and we're going to put in 150 grams. I don't sieve my flour. I don't find a need for it. And in fact, I watched something recently. I watched a programme, an old Nigel Slater programme, and he visited this kind of scientist fella. And this scientist fella said that actually it serves no purpose, sieving your flour. So do as you wish, but I don't bother sieving it. Okay, so into the flour, I'm going to put in a teaspoon of baking powder and then 25 grams of icing sugar. So I'll just zeroize that off. And I tend to spoon icing sugar in because it can sometimes come out in a huge cloud. So we want 25 grams. There we go. And that can come off the scales now. Just give that a little stir just to work those ingredients through the flour. Okay. And then I've got 100 mils of milk here. Mine's semi-skimmed milk, which I find works perfectly well. Whole milk would be fine. I wouldn't use sort of skimmed milk. It's too thin and watery for me. So into the milk, I'm going to crack my eggs into it. Gosh, that's a hard egg. And then just take a fork and just beat that through. Okay, that's fine. Now before I mix that, I'm just going to turn the heat on under my pan just so that it can be warming up. I'm going to pour the liquid into the dry ingredients and then go in with my balloon whisk and just whisk them together. It's a bit like making a Yorkshire pudding, really. If you're used to making Yorkshire puddings, it's just really like a sweet Yorkshire pudding batter with some raising agents. I wouldn't bother getting the electric mixer out for this. Honestly, a balloon whisk is fine. It just takes a few minutes to get a nice smooth batter. Okay, so that's nice and smooth now, lovely and thick. So the last thing I'm going to do, and this is something that isn't often in recipes, this is just a slight modification that I do. I mean, I've tried this both ways and I find this works much better. You know, to cook your pancakes, I've seen recipes quite often where they will say to put a little bit of butter in the pan or oil. I don't like that. It produces more of a fried sort of feel to the pancakes, and that's not what I want. So what I do The butter, the tablespoon of butter, I've melted it. And when I say I've melted it, I've literally just melted it. It's not hot. So, you know, I've used the microwave and I've just gone really careful to the point of where it's just melted. And when I touch it on the bottom, it's really not that hot. If it feels really warm, just let it cool for a little bit. You don't want to introduce hot butter into a cold mixture because I find that it can solidify back really quickly. Whereas if you let it cool down, it merges in, it amalgamates into the batter. So that tablespoon of butter goes in. And this kind of enriches the batter a little bit, and I find then I don't have any problems with it sticking. And just adds that extra little bit of flavour. So just let that mix in. You can see it's completely disappeared. You can't even tell it's there. And that's our batter ready to use. You don't need to leave it to rest or anything like that. I just use it straight away. Okay, so my frying pan has been heating up just on the kind of lowest setting. When if you put your hand over like this, you'll feel heat coming up from it. You want it just on a sort of moderate heat. It doesn't want to be too hot, doesn't want to be too cold, just somewhere in the middle. That feels about right. You can make your pancakes any size you want. If you want little tiny ones, make little tiny ones. If you want huge ones, fill the whole pan, it's entirely up to you. But I find that this amount of mixture makes, for me, 6 nice sized pancakes. You can eat one and know you've had one kind of thing. But what I do is I put in about 3 tablespoons of mixture per pancake, and I do 2 at a time. So I put 1 spoon over there and 1 over there, and then go back, another spoon, go back, that's 2, and then I find they sort of cook at the same pace if I do that. 3 and 3. So I'm now gonna just let them cook. You don't need to touch them or anything. Just let them cook for a few minutes, and the stage they need to get to is you will see that you'll start getting lots of air bubbles coming up all over your pancake, and they will have just sort of started to lift a little bit. Just takes a few minutes. Okay, so that's just had about 2 or 3 minutes, and you can see now all of these bubbles that have started to appear, and you start to get you can see a sort of skin forming on top. So we should be good to flip now. So I'll do this really quick. So just get your spatula underneath or whatever is. These are I think it's called a fish slice in this country. Underneath, and just quickly flip. And this is the colour that I like. As soon as you flip it, you'll see the pancakes just go whoosh and rise up. Oh, I love it. It's so good. So just leave them on that side for a little bit less of a time. They don't need as long on the second side, I find. Just a minute or 2, well, maybe 2 minutes probably. And you can have a peek underneath to see the colour. But generally, I find that they're done if you touch in the middle, it feels sort of firm. It bounces back, but it feels firm, so you know that it's cooked in that centre. These are just, obviously, you can tell they're just plain pancakes. If you wanted to add things into these, like, a handful of blueberries, some raisins, chocolate chips, if you're that way inclined, then you can do that. And I would do that when you've, first spoon your ingredients in. I would then just maybe sprinkle whatever you want on top of that, and then, when you flip, that will cause that to cook on the other side. And these are good to go, so these are done now. So all I'm going to do is just take these out of the pan and pop them over here on my cooling rack. That's the next 2 cooking. So it's this stage, if I was going to put on some blueberries, for example, I would just now scatter a few blueberries on the top there, or raisins, or whatever you want. So I'm going to finish off these pancakes and then we can try them. My yummy pancake here. Oh, I can't wait to try it. It's really fluffy. I don't know if you'll be able to see. If I pick up the piece, can you see how fluffy it is inside? It's gorgeous. Now on my pancake, I've just drizzled on some golden syrup. Tate & Lyle's. Is it called Tate & Lyle's still these days? It might just be Lyle's golden syrup these days. But golden syrup is the thing. You put on whatever you want on your pancake, it's entirely up to you. But for me, the nirvana of pancake toppings, plain and simple, golden syrup. So let's give it a try. Oh, yummy yum. I can't stab it. You know, way less calories, I would say, than a big chunk of chocolate cake or, you know, anything like that. And just as delicious in my opinion. Super yummy. So a golden syrup topping is fabulous, but what would also be extremely yummy would be some delicious homemade jam. What we're going to need to make our lovely jam. We are going to need some fruit. Now it's entirely up to you what fruit you use, but you're going to need 300 grams of frozen fruit. I like to use frozen fruit because you can get that any time of year. You can use fruit that you grew in your garden in the summer, and in the depths of winter you can pull it out and make yourself some gorgeous jam. So we are using frozen fruits. It is all, you know, this is frozen. You don't have to let it defrost first. The combination I'm going to use is half blueberries and half raspberries. So I've got 150 grams of each of those. We're then going to need sugar. This is just plain granulated sugar. It's not preserving sugar. You don't need that. This is just normal granulated sugar, and we've got 300 grams of that. And then we're going to need some lemon juice. I've got 2 lemons here. One might be enough, but when I get the juice out of them, I'll see if I've got enough from one. If not, I might need to use the other. So what kitchen equipment will we need to make our jam? Okay, so we're going to need a nice roomy pan. You shouldn't, when you're making jam, don't cram in, you know, your ingredients. You want to have lots of room for the ingredients to bubble, because it will rise up as it bubbles. So you don't want to really be any more than half full in your pan. We're just making a small quantity today. It's just, you know, one standard jam jar size, but I'm still using a nice roomy saucepan. We've got a jar to use. This is just a jam jar that has been used previously. I have washed it well in hot soapy water, and I'm going to pop that into a moderate oven just for about 10 minutes to sterilise it. We've got our weighing scales to weigh our fruit and our sugar. And then you don't need specifically a Christmas plate, but you're going to need a plate that you can put in the freezer. This just happens to be a plate that I can do that with. So it's got to be a freezer-proof plate for popping in the freezer. And then I just use a nice wooden spoon to stir everything up. So that's everything we're going to need. So it's time to get jamming. Okay, so this is dead easy. All I'm going to do is I'm going to put my fruits in the pan. Pour in your sugar, and then I need my lemon juice, which is about 3 tablespoons. So I'm going to just start with 1 lemon. I'm going to cut it. To get the maximum amount of juice out of a lemon, you probably all know this, but if you give it a little roll before you juice it, you'll get more juice. So now I'm going to cut that in half. And then I don't use any fancy equipment. I just squeeze it. Don't worry about the pips, because we're going to measure it into a spoon anyway. Let's see how much we've got from 1 lemon. It depends on the size of your lemon. You might have enough just with 1 lemon. And we need 3 tablespoons. So I'm not sure if I'll have enough here, but I'm just going to use my measure like that, avoid the pips, and just pour that in as well. So 1, 2, I think I might have enough actually, it's almost 3, and then yeah, that's just 3 tablespoons I got with 1 nice lemon. So now I've got this on just a really low heat, because the first thing we need to do is just to heat it up enough to defrost your fruits. So just give it a little stir, and then just kind of, you know, leave it, but just keep an eye on it. And it'll take maybe 10 or 15 minutes to defrost your fruit. You just want to heat that really gently until your fruit has defrosted and the sugar has started to dissolve. So there we go, we've made our pancakes. Our jam is happily just cooking away at the moment. So come back in part 2 when we're going to finish off the jam and we're going to make our fantastic spelt bread. So I'll see you back soon. Lines in the top of the bread. So it just comes out super.
Now you're talking, people. I may have the constitution of a newborn baby, but I can tell you this. When you cook like that, you can have your cake and eat it too. Oh, yes.
We can anyway.
Yes. I mean, everybody's different at the end of the day.
Yes.
But I can tell you this. There's nothing better than sitting down to eat something and not feeling tired and lethargic afterwards.
Yeah, and also worrying that it's going to bother you, I think, is you know...
Worrying that it's going to bother you, but I didn't worry necessarily that it was going to bother me. Things just bothered me.
With me, it's slightly... I mean, your tummy is bad because of the surgery that
Yes.
Dan had, but mine is just IBS. You know, it's plain and simple IBS, so I just have to be careful what I
But
eat.
forget all that. This stuff tastes better.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It
Honestly.
tastes better.
It's the old-fashioned thing of, you know, something you make yourself is always, I think, it tastes better.
But also, though, sometimes you can make things with yourself and think, oh, I know what I'll do. As we've done in the past. We've had a history of making things with 18 tons of butter in it. And so there's no surprise.
That's a bit harsh.
Look, let's go back through Pudding Club. There was plenty of things.
Yeah, but we didn't eat it all the time.
We didn't. But when you do eat like that, it's no wonder you feel a bit dodgy afterwards.
Yeah, but some people can eat like that, can't they? And it doesn't bother them.
Well, 22-year-olds.
Yes.
Yes.
That's basically it.
But I think my point is, you hear these people saying, oh, healthy eating, it tastes rubbish. Okay, this might not be...
It's not necessarily like diet food. It
No,
isn't. It isn't.
what it is-
We're not talking about diet food here.
It's healthy food.
Yeah.
It's, a way to have a lovely...
It's a balanced. We
Yes.
found it to be a healthy, balanced diet. You know, you can
Well, you don't
have,
feel like you're missing out on treats.
No, I mean,
No.
you can have treats and still have a healthy, balanced diet. Absolutely, you can. But we're obviously not talking about someone who's trying to lose weight.
And how gorgeous does that jam look? I can't wait to see how it's going to taste. In fact, I can't wait. Let's see Kay's reaction from part 2 of the show.
Now a slight wrinkle when I pushed it. Oh my goodness, it's so yummy. It's like, well, I'll describe it when I eat it. It's good. I can't even tell you. It's so yummy.
She was making excuses to try it twice. Deliberately making excuses to lick her finger. It's not acceptable, I tell you.
It's so yummy, honestly. And if you've never made on it, you've got to do it. You've got to do it.
To get there, we need to get on with the show. So I think
Yes.
it's time that I ask Kay Jones, what's off your needles?
I do have a few things. Yay me. So the first thing is I finished the Cape Cod hat and I've actually already worn it because it's just so fabulous. So if you remember, oh, look at the pom-pom. I'll tell you about that in a second. So I finished this lovely hat. So this is the hat. Oh, it's going to match my top. This is the hat that I knit. Oh, lovely pom-pom. Knit using the Malabrigo Raster, which is a super bulky. And you can see it's in Cape Cod grey. Hence, I stole the name from the colourway name because it just suited the design so well, really. And this is it's a single ply, not a single, yes, it's a single ply yarn. It's kind of slightly felted. If I just hold it up, you can see it's got that sort of felted look to it. And I had this much left. It comes in 150 gram skeins, I seem to think, yes. So it comes in 150 gram skeins and I had about 20 grams left over. And there's 90 yards to 150 grams. That's bonkers, isn't it? That just shows you how thick it is. But it's just gorgeous. It's merino, 100% merino. hand wash. So don't put this in, do not put it in the washer if you use this yarn. I think it'd come out the size of like a doll or something. But yeah, it's finished. And I put on this pom-pom. I made this pom-pom out of mohair silk. Do you know the mohair silk lace weight? I just had a skein of undyed in my stash. I think they come in 50 gram skeins, don't they? Is it 50 grams or is it 25 grams? I can't remember. But I used about half of a, you know the skeins you get if you buy hand-dyed mohair silk? I used about half of that. I think they come in, I can't remember if it's 50 or 25 grams, I forget. But I just used that. And look, ooh, look how fluffy. Ooh. I used an extra large pom-pom maker from Clover. And it came out about 4 inches, I think, the pom-pom. I thought it was too big, but actually I just think it's fabulous. I'll put it on. It'll mess my hair up, but that's okay. Because I think it's good to see these things on. I have got a ponytail, but we can do it. Oh, look. Yeah, the pom-pom is a little bit ridiculous, but I also love it. I did go for a walk wearing this, and now I'm thinking, did people think I looked a bit like they're like, look at that woman with that pom-pom? Do you think people think that? Am I overthinking this?
Probably.
But yeah, isn't it great? I love it. So this hat is the next platinum design. It will be going out on the 1st of March, so not that long really, is it, to wait? So if you want to get your yarn ready, then by all means do so. I did post some information about it in our private Facebook group, the Bakery Bears private Facebook group.
For Bakery Bear patrons, because
Yes.
this pattern goes out to gold and platinum patrons.
Yes.
The first pattern in the series was the Advent pattern, which
Yeah.
was the Christmas in the Big Woods.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
then the second pattern is Cape Cod, and then there's 2
Yeah.
more patterns coming later on in the year
Yes.
that form part of the 2022 Platinum collection.
Yes. So yeah, I did post details about it in the Facebook group if you want to go and have a look at that, if you didn't see it, and it just has yarn requirements and things like that because people were really interested in it. So yeah, the Cape Cod hat will be coming out on the 1st of March.
What else is off your needles?
I finished the granny stripe blanket that I've been working on. Now I say I've finished it because basically I've had to finish it at this point. I started to do the border. I have done it a square, like I said before, and I started to do the border.
Is it a perfectly square square?
Well, I'm not sure. I think it's about a square. I started to do the border, and actually I love this bright pink as the border. I normally do a more subdued border.
That looks a bit salmony.
It is like a salmon pink. This is the strawberry colourway that I dyed up.
Yeah, I remember.
And I had some left over, so I used it for the border, and I really, really love using that bright pop on the border. Now, I wanted to make the border bigger. At this stage, I've done 2 rounds of granny all the way around, and I wanted to do it thicker. I wanted to have a really nice thick border, but I started having recurring crochet problems that I have with various aches and pains, and I just thought, you know what, I can't do this. I can't force myself to do this any longer. So I managed very slowly and gently, I managed to get 2 rounds done. I thought, right, I'm going to call it done at that point because
I think it's perfect.
yeah, I think it's fine.
I don't think it would need any more than that.
I think it's fine, isn't it? You know,
It's a perfect lap blanket.
Yeah, it is a perfect size lap blanket. It's a really good size. You know, it's this wide, which is cool, and it's this long as well. So it's perfect for on your lap. And I'm glad I just made that decision. Do you know what? I was getting weird kind of, it was all on my left, you know, I was getting tingles in my left arm, and it was going up to my shoulder and kind of even up into my face. It was bizarre. And it only happened when I was crocheting, so I knew it was related to that. So I thought, right, I've got to stop. So I stopped. But I finished it, so that's cool, isn't it? So this is done in all fingering weight, and I've got another lovely lap size blanket.
Perfect.
I do have one other crochet blanket on the go, which is my lovely V-stitch one, which I'm currently rethinking, and I might put that yarn into a knitted blanket instead, because I really think I'm getting to the point with crochet where I can do little bits of it, but things like a big old blanket, I just now seem to just have these recurring muscle problems with it. So
what else
what
is
else?
off your needles?
The other thing, I decided I'd knit these blanket squares.
That's not a lap blanket.
This is not a lap blanket. Well, it is for teddy bears. I knit these blanket squares a while back, and it's a modified version of my Stitching Time blanket. You'll probably remember these. I put the modification into the pattern and got all that sorted, and then they've just sort of sat sadly in a bag, and I haven't done anything else with them. And I found them the other day and I thought, you know what, I'm going to do something with these squares, and I'm going to turn them into a little blanket for Bryony's toys. So I thought, oh, that won't take me long. I was like, it was like on a weekend, and I said, I can get that done in a couple of hours. It took me like 2 days. But I love it. Look. Oh, look. How cute is that? Do you remember these squares? I bet you do. So yeah, it's just a modified version of my Stitching Time. So it's a mitered square in the middle, and then log cabin, 2 rounds of log cabin around it, and then a thin log cabin around that. And then they're all seamed together. That's the back, if you want to see the seaming on the back, which is quite neat. And it's given me this lovely little blanket for Bryony's toys. And this to be honest, this gives me as much joy as a full-size blanket. Because, you know, Bryony loves them. She's got loads of these little blankets now. And I just love making them, because she loves giving, you know, she'll be like, oh, who's going to get this? And, you know, I'm going to go and try it out. And she'll like snuggle 3 toys underneath it, 3 of her, you know, like Pooh Bear, Big Teddy and Goffy or something. And she'll be like, oh yeah, they love it. Thanks, Mum. And I'm like, you know, I'm a happy knitter when that happens. And it's beautiful, isn't it? I think it looks like a bit like stained glass or something.
Yeah.
Do you?
See the wooden frames.
Yeah. So I'm really pleased that I've done something with those squares. So if you've got the Stitching Time pattern, then like I say, I did do an update on Ravelry to this, so you'll be able to go and download the updated version. And, you know, if not, you could go and purchase the pattern if you never have, and you'll get 2 versions. You get the original Stitching Time and then this cute little modification.
Right, it's time to head back into the kitchen to finish off the jam.
Yes.
And then the crowning glory, the thing which keeps me sane, the gorgeous spelt bread.
I'm going to gently let it drip in. So just screw on your lid. Welcome back everyone to Kay's Cosy Kitchen. So the first thing we need to do now is to finish off our jam. Okay, so this has had about 10 or 15 minutes, and you can see now it's warm. You can see a bit of steam coming off there. The fruits have all defrosted and the sugar has dissolved. You can tell the sugar's dissolved because you can feel it with your wooden spoon. So now, what I've done a few minutes ago is I just popped that saucer into the freezer. It needs to be really cold, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise the temperature now on this and bring it really to quite a fairly fierce rolling boil, and I'm going to boil it for about 5 minutes, and then we're going to test it to see if it's sort of cooked enough. I have found that it's taken me more like 10 minutes of having it at that sort of boiling point. I think this must depend on how much water is in your fruits, because what we're doing is we're boiling off the water. So try it after 5 minutes, and I'm going to show you how to test it. And then if it's not done, just let it boil for another couple of minutes and test it again, and just keep doing that until you get to that point where it needs to be. And I will show you that when we first test it, on how you tell if it's done. So you can see now it's coming to the boil. I'm just going to keep an eye on it, because you don't want it to sort of foam up and boil way up. You just want to keep it at this kind of, can you see how it's boiling now? We've got that nice
Nice amount of bubbles going on, but it's not completely crazy. Okay, so it's been bubbling away for maybe about six minutes or so. So I'm going to give it a try. I don't think it's going to be quite ready yet, but I want to just show you the sort of process of trying it. So I've got my plate out of the freezer. It's really lovely and cold. So you just need to scoop up a little bit, pop it on the plate, and just leave it for like, I don't know, 30 seconds, a minute, just to cool off. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to push it with my little finger. And if it wrinkles, it's done. If it doesn't, which I suspect it's not going to, if it just flows, it's not done. And you need to just let it bubble away for another 2-3 minutes and test it again. You know, put your plate back in the freezer, keep it always in the freezer. So that's just had, as I've been waffling on there, that's just had a few seconds. So I'm just going to take my little finger and push it. And you can see that's not wrinkling yet, so it's not done. Okay, so it's had a few more minutes and it looks now much more sort of viscous. Is that the right word? I don't know if that's the right word, but it looks more like there's not really water in there now. I don't know if viscous is the right word. So I'm just going to take a bit more and pop it on my plate. And it's also slightly darker in colour, because I think what's happened is the water, you know, we've lost some of that water. So I'm just going to leave that and just see how we go with the wrinkle test. When I've made this before and I did the wrinkle test, it did wrinkle, but not sort of corrugated-y wrinkles, if you know what I mean. So I'm going to now try again. And we are getting now a slight wrinkle when I pushed it. It's good. I can't even tell you. It's so yummy. I think we're about there. And I've just got that feeling that we're at that point. To me, it looks like the water has gone now out of that. I think we're done. So I'm going to turn it off. And then I'm just going to let this settle for about 10 minutes. My jar is in the oven, just sterilising. And then I'm going to take that out of the oven. I'm just going to pop it in the jar. The jar will be warm. The jam is hot, so we've not got a sort of difference in temperature, so I can just put that straight into that nice warm jar. Okay, so we've got our jar, which is still really nice and hot straight from the oven, and our jam is still hot, so I can put hot into hot and not worry that the glass is going to crack. So I'm just going to pour this in. At the moment, it will look quite liquid. That's because it's still hot. As it cools, it's going to really thicken up and be delicious. Now you can, if you've got a funnel, you can use a funnel, but I've actually got a sort of spout thing, not a spout, what's this? A pouring thing on my saucepan, so I'm literally just going to pour it in. I'm going to use 2 hands because my saucepan's quite heavy, so I'm just going to gently let it drip in. Because really, how beautiful does that look as well? The colour is so fantastic. So there we go, our jar is full of the delicious jam. Everything is still really hot at the moment. That's perfect, because what we can actually do, if you put the lid on now, whilst everything is hot, as it cools down, it's going to form a vacuum as everything sort of cools. So that will just help with the preservation. So we can be careful because it is still hot. So I'm going to put my mitt on actually. So just screw on your lid. And your jam is done, so you just need to let it cool, and you can use it straight away really, or you can store it. If you want to store it, just leave it as it is with the lid on, and it will store in a pantry for up to a year, I would say, no problem. Once you've opened it and you start using it, keep it in the fridge, and I would say use it within a month. So the jam is now done, but we need something to put the jam on. So let's get to our bread. To make our delicious spelt bread. So first of all, we are going to need some flour, and I'm using, and have been using for a while now, the white spelt flour from Dove's Farm. We're going to need some salt. I like to use sea salt, but
But in bread making, it should really be the fine, free-flowing sea salt, not the one that you would use, you know, for sprinkling on food. You want the fine one. And then I've got yeast. This is dried, fast-acting yeast. We've got some sugar. This can be, I mean, I'm using caster sugar. That's just what I've got in. It can just be normal granulated sugar. That's fine. We've got some oil. The type of oil that you use is entirely up to you, really. I like the light olive oil, which is what I've got here, but you can use whatever oil is your preference. And then some warm water. So let's now take a look at what kitchen equipment we're going to need to make our bread. Okay, so first of all, we're going to need a nice roomy bowl for mixing up our dough. And then I've got some weighing scales. I would really recommend that you use scales when you are doing anything really that's more of a baking, or, you know, bread is a baking thing, because we need to really be precise with our measurements. So scales are an essential for me. I've then got some measuring spoons. Just a normal sort of kitchen dessert spoon, and then our tin for making our bread. This is a 2-pound loaf tin. Mine is a Prestige one. It's a non-stick. I've been using this one for a while. It's brilliant. You know, the bread comes out of it really easily, and it's a really good solid metal tin. It needs to be a metal tin, because that conducts heat much better than any other, you know, whether it be glass or ceramic or anything like that. So a metal tin, 2-pound in size. So that's everything that we're going to need. So it's need, do you get it? So made myself laugh. So it's now time to start bread making. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is to measure out our flour into the bowl. So I'm going to pop the bowl on the scales. So I'm going to pop in my spelt flour. This is a white flour, but you'll notice when the bread's made, it has a sort of creamy look to it. It's not a pure white. The sort of natural colour of it is like a creamy colour. So we've got 500 grams going in, and really be as precise as you can with measuring everything that's going to go in. I found it makes a huge difference to your finished loaf if you've got precise measurements. So I just sort of go gently when I get to the sort of 400 mark. And if you go past it, you can always take a little bit out. It's not a problem. There we go, 500. And then into the flour, I'm going to pop a teaspoon of sugar. So I've got my measuring spoons here. I find that a teaspoon weighs about 5 grams. So drop that in. You can see 505 it's gone up to. That's what I find a teaspoon generally weighs. And then see, it's gone to 506. That's okay. And now we've got the yeast going in. So again, I find this weighs about 5 grams-ish. Yeah, there you go. The next thing we're going to do is add in the water. But before I do that, I want to just mix these ingredients that I've got in here already into the flour. I want to sort of distribute evenly through there. Now, a few little turns in the bowl will be enough. And we're now going to put in our water. Now, I've discovered that my scales, you can change the unit, and I can change it to millilitres. Whoops. So we can weigh the water going in. You can see I've got my water here in a measuring jug, and I do find this is much more accurate to weigh it rather than rely on the line that's on here, because I've also found that the amount of water you put in, keeping that accurate is really important. If you get too little or too much, it really affects the way your dough comes out. So I've got warm water here, and we're putting in 300 millilitres. So I've got about 300 millilitres in here, but I'm also keeping an eye on the scales because I'm weighing it as it goes in. So just pour that in. And again, when I get past 200, I sort of go gently, and sometimes it's impossible to get it bang on 300. If you're a mil either side, I find that that's fine. 301. We're okay with 301. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my spoon and just give it 2 or 3 quick stirs like that. That's all I need to do. And now I'm going to put in the other ingredients. So we've got a teaspoon of salt, and I don't know for certain, but I think the reason why we put the salt in afterwards is because salt, so I've got a teaspoon there, you can see, salt will kill yeast, and keeping it sort of separate just means that there's less contact between the yeast and the salt. And then the final thing to go in is a tablespoon of oil. There we go. I'm going to go back in with my spoon, and initially I'm just going to work all those ingredients together. Go around the bowl until you start getting a dough. And you can see now we're almost to a sort of ball of dough there. So now it's time to get your hand in. So we're going to knead it now, but because the spelt flour, the properties of the spelt flour, it means that it doesn't need to be kneaded as much as a normal dough. So what I'm going to do first of all is just bring it all together. So in other words, make sure my bowl is clean. So I just go around with my hand and get all of those little bits that are there off the bowl and into the actual dough itself. There we go. Once you've done that, we're now going to start kneading, and all it needs is 100 kneads. So what I do is I just use the heel. Is that my heel of my hand? My knuckles. I use my knuckles and just do this 100 times. So I'm now going to count. So that's 100. If you do a few more, it doesn't matter. I hope you can see that the dough is really nice and smooth now. Really lovely. It's got a nice stretch to it. It now needs to rest and to prove. It takes about an hour, but you basically want to leave it till it's doubled in size. So I'm just going to cover the bowl with a damp tea cloth and set it to one side to have a lovely prove. So magically that hour has passed, and you can see that our bread now is lovely and puffy. It's risen up and it's definitely doubled in size. So it's time now to knock it back, give it another knead, and then it's on to its second proving. I've got my tin here ready, and I'm just going to oil this just very slightly. So I'm just going to spray in just a few sprays. This is just, I got this off Amazon. I just fill it with the same oil that I used before. It's just light olive oil, but you can just spray it, so you just get a tiny amount. It's brilliant. I use it a lot in cooking. So I've just put a little bit in, and I'm just going to use my brush. You just want to make sure you've got a coating on all of those sides. You can see that that is. So now we need to give this a second kneading. Exactly the same as before. I'm just going to knock it back, which just essentially means you give it a little punch, which is always fun. And then I'm going to knead it another 100 times, just like I did before. So you can see you do that and it then starts to deflate, and you can see all the air bubbles. So can you see how lovely and stretchy and airy it is? That's just what you want. So give it another 100 kneads, and this time you'll feel it. It feels bouncy. So I'm going to carry on and count my 100. Okay, so that is my 100. So now we need to pop it into our tin. So just grab hold of it and plop it straight in. It might stick to your hand a bit like that, that's fine. So we now need to give it a second prove. So cover it as we did before, and then just leave it. You don't need to leave it for as long this time. It's about 40 minutes. And what I tend to do is I set a timer for half an hour. After that half an hour, I turn my oven on to preheat it for those 10 minutes whilst it's having its final little prove. And once again, it will double in size. It'll spread out into this tin, and it will have doubled in size. So I'm preheating my oven to about 195 degrees, that's C. I do have a fan oven, so, be judged by your own oven. It wants to be quite quite a hot oven for bread, but really, you know your own oven. But just as a guide, mine's about 195 degrees C. Okay, so our bread has had its second proof, and you can see now it's risen up. It's almost sort of to the level of the tin. Perfect. Now, before I just finish off the bread to pop it in the oven, I'm going to do one thing, which is, for me, I've found to be the most important thing in getting a good loaf of bread, and that is I'm going to produce some steam in my oven. And to do that, all I'm going to do is, I've got just an old sort of baking tray here. I'm going to pop that into my oven, and I'm then going to put in some boiling water into this, and that is what's going to create the steam in our oven, because we really need steam to get a good crust and a good rise and just the perfect bread. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to get some flour and liberally dust it over the top. And this, for me, serves two purposes. It looks great, but also it means when I do the next thing, it makes that process easier, because we're stopping the top from being sticky. There we go, that's fine. So now I'm going to slash the top. And I just got this off Amazon. I think I just put in something like bread slasher or something like that. And this came up, and it's essentially a razor blade on the end of a wooden tool. And it just makes the whole process safe. It comes with this little case, which you can stick it back in, and there's no risk of anybody hurting themselves. It makes it really easy. So I'm just going to use this just to slash lines in the top of the bread. Do it fairly rapidly, and what I then tend to do is I just go back over the centre ones just a couple of times. What this does, I find, is it gives more of a rise. I always feel that you get a much better rise if you slash it. So now we're ready to put this in the oven. So I'm going to get that in my oven, which is now nice and steamy, and I'm going to let it bake for about 45 minutes. It might be a little bit less, might be a little bit more, it depends on your oven and also how brown you like it, but about 45 minutes. Okay, so there we go, everyone. Oh my goodness, how amazing does that look? Now, I know from experience that this is done, but the way you test it is just tip it out. See, it just comes out super easily. And then just give the bottom a tap, and it will sound hollow, and that's perfect. We just need to pop it onto a wire rack. So we just need to let this cool now, and then we can cut ourselves a slice. So I have got a lovely slice of the bread. I've put on a bit of butter and some lovely jam that we've just made. Oh, it looks delicious. I'm going to dig in and try it. Oh, it still looks so nice. It's honestly like I'm 5 again. Do you know, I used to have like jam sandwiches when you were little. It's absolute heaven. Maybe I'll have a jam sandwich for my tea. It's so nice. Just had a little moment there with my bread and jam. It's fabulous. That's all I can say. I can't wait for Dan to have this other slice here, but I'm going to finish this one. It's so yummy. The bread is amazing. The crust is phenomenal. It's really crunchy, just gorgeous, and it's soft inside and pillowy, and oh, it's everything that bread should be. And I'll also say, actually, we found that it lasts really well. I mean, Dan has a loaf and it'll still be sort of toasting the crust of it 4 days later, and it's perfectly fine. So it seems to keep really well. It's absolutely fabulous. So I'm going to very happily finish this piece, and I will see you back next month for more of Kay's Cosy Kitchen.
She's let the cat out of the bag. Let me tell you, if I could give you one piece of advice in 2022, it's this. Stop what you're doing right now and go and make that spelt bread. Then get yourself some butter, spread it liberally on top, and put some of that jam on it.
Oh, it's absolute heaven.
You will thank me later.
Absolute heaven.
This has been feeding us successfully now. with no repercussions.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. I don't eat much of the spelt bread I make because I know Dan loves it so much, and so I eat almost no bread at all. I don't have any other bread. I don't buy it anymore. We don't buy bread at all. Well, we buy it for Bryony for her school sandwiches, but
yeah, she would, I'm certain, prefer to have the spelt bread.
Yeah, I just couldn't
because
make it. I'd have to make it.
Blooming adores it.
She loves it. Yeah, she loves it. And after I've made a loaf, I might give her some for a breakfast, and she'll be like, "Oh, have I got some of Dad's bread today?"
I'll tell you this, right? In my life, it is the greatest thing I have ever eaten. There's only one type of bread that came close, and that was freshly made French bread from France about 30 years ago when I was watching my Daddy Logic Problems.
Yeah, going to the bakery every morning.
Going to the French bakery in France and getting French bread. That was close. This is better. And it's better because it's so light.
It's really light, and that is something I've found using spelt flour in all recipes. I've now used spelt flour for biscuits, for bread, for pastry, and for cakes, and it's just been fabulous in all of those. I've actually been making a cake these past couple of weeks with it, which I will be showing you later on in the series.
It's amazing.
It is
cake.
The most delicious cake I think I've had in I can't think how long.
What cake ever have we had that's nicer than that cake?
I can't even
There
think.
isn't one.
I honestly can't even think. It is fantastic, and I will be showing it you. But literally everything I've made with spelt flour has been amazing.
What I want in life is, if something tastes great, I want to be able to eat loads of it and not feel bad afterwards. And that is what you can do with this. Just because of the way, it's got to be the way that gluten is.
It's a different sort of gluten. So, as I said in the video, it's not gluten-free. It does have gluten, but it's a different type of gluten, and it breaks down much more easily in your body. And that's why you don't have to knead it for as long, and you don't have to prove it for as long, because, it just works quicker. And it, like I say, it breaks down much more easily. It's sort of, I think it's more sort of water soluble than other types of gluten. And we eat it absolutely and not have a single problem at all. This is obviously just our experience, and I can't speak for everybody. But I would definitely say it's worth a try if you've not tried it.
You can keep all the chocolates and all the cakes. All that I want is a slice of that with some butter and some peanut butter.
Oh, yeah, you like
and that's the end of that. It is tremendous. So honestly, you're going to love it. And that's probably been the thing that we've been asked the most about in the last 2 years, has been the bread. So the bread has now been revealed. And
those pancakes as well. I've been making those pancakes the past few weeks. Yeah.
Longer than weeks.
Probably past few months. Yeah. Oh, they're gorgeous. They're so fluffy and light. And that's the thing. Anything I've made with spelt flour, it doesn't feel heavy at all. That's the biggest difference, I would say.
And they do seem to last for ages.
Yeah. I mean,
everything with spelt seems to last.
Your loaf seems to last a long time, doesn't it? And you end up toasting the last couple of slices, don't you?
Yeah, because it just gets a bit dry.
But
so you just toast it.
You just toast it, and it's fantastic. Yeah, and you eat the whole thing. You never waste any of it. Yeah.
Now, as I'm sure many of you will know, we produce special editions of all our featured shows, and this one is the longest one ever. Now, don't panic. It's not like 5 hours, it's only 45 minutes. But if you want the full experience of Kay's Cosy Kitchen, just follow the link in the show notes below. Now, Kay's Cosy Kitchen will return on the 25th of March with her next amazing episode. Now it's time for the Endy Bits.
Endy Bits.
Now, the Great British Coastal Challenge continues. We will be giving our updates on our Patreon-only show, which, as we said at the start of the show, it's on the 27th of February at 2 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. So remember that the knitting and the crafting is for our Bakery Bear patrons, and there's a group linked in the show notes below, so you can go along and see what all the things are and how you then tally your distances and things.
Yeah.
And then the running and the walking is open to everybody, and again, there's a group listed in the show notes below which you can go and follow. There's actually a link to our Patreon page which is open to everyone, so you can follow that, because this bit of the activity, the running and the walking, is open to everyone. So if you see a link and it says Patreon on it, you can follow it. It's fine. It's completely open. You can go and read it, and you can find out how to come and get involved in our walking and our running. The teams are shaping up rather beautifully. What we need now is we could do with another team in now.
Right.
So we could do with about 25, 26 more people.
Right.
So people, come, please.
Walk
come and join
run with us.
Yes, walk and run with us.
Hey, I did well last month, didn't I? Since the beginning of the year, because I had an injury the last couple of months of last year, I had a foot injury.
We may have spoken about it. The silly girl wore heels when we were going out to do.
I think that's what it was.
That is what it was.
I wore some little boots with a little block heel, and I think that's what must have done it. But I got the plantar thing that you can get, and it took a good couple of months really for that to get better. So I was struggling back end of last year. So 1st of January I went out, and I've walked every day since. I've not missed a day.
And you're not going to?
No, that's my challenge for this year. I want to keep it up, and I want to try and walk every single day.
That's the ticket.
So some days I might not manage a full, I tend to try and do 2.5 miles, sometimes a bit longer. But every day I'll be out there.
As I mentioned earlier on in the show, the latest issue of Knitability just came out yesterday, and it's absolutely jam-packed full, bigger than ever, because there's a brand new feature in it.
Cool.
I know. Jen, our amazing editor, has been doing a stupendous job.
She's fabulous.
We've got an interview with Woolly Mammoth Yarns.
Oh, yes.
The designer Marna Gilligan. And we've got a special article all about Laura Nelkin's Knit for Food initiative, which is taking place this year on the 12th of February, which I think, if you're watching this show the day it comes out, is tomorrow.
Right.
So it's an amazing initiative, and it's definitely worth going and checking out. But all that plus articles from me, and there's some Patreon articles, amazing Patreon articles actually, and all our usual superb features. Speaking of great things happening, we've got some great content on the way. Just dropped actually this week Kay's epic planner and pen review for 2022. So if you want to find out all about Kay's planner journey, find out what she liked, what she didn't like, the one she's gone for, maybe get some ideas yourself. But even if you're already into the year and your planner's all sorted, if you want to find out about some pens, again, ones that she likes, ones that she doesn't like, go and watch that review and you'll find out all about it. But then coming up as a tutorial special, all about knitting contrast heels, and that's following on from the special that you did earlier on this year, all about how you pick the perfect contrast for your socks.
Yeah.
So that's coming up later, and also there's a Case Design Diary on the way, and so much more. There's my self-contained knitter show where I'm going to be. I have to decide what my next cast on's going to be.
Wow.
So it's a tricky one. I'm uncertain at the moment. I'm being drawn. I'm not going to say it. I'm just going to forget about it.
You've not spoke to me about it, so...
No. But look,
exciting.
Folks, that's it. Told you it was a full show.
Wow.
Oh, yes. We will see you in 2 weeks.
Going for a walk now.
And it will be the return of Kay's My Favourite Colourways.
Yes.
So My Favourite Colourways is back next time.
Yeah.
And then the time after that, that's when we're back walking the wall.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for watching.
Thank you,
and we'll
everybody.
See you in 2 weeks.
Have fun.
For more.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Enthusiasm's not quitting for Jen and Kay the bakery bears. They'll take you to fabulous places of which their favorites they'll share. You better buy a pattern and get yourself a bakery bear. You'll find yourself in a castle while watching the bakery bears. It never feels like a hassle to sit and watch the bakery bears. What's on your shelf or what's in your